any reflections on serving on the board of this huge public sector enterprise, Telstra, which was more or less a monopoly provider of telecommunications in those days, and there was some competition on the horizon, I guess, from the likes of Optus and so forth.
Well, yeah, Optus came on the scene. Frank Blunt was appointed the CEO. He did an excellent job in taking Telstra forward and making it more commercial and more in tune with being a listed company. It's a very fine company, Telstra, hugely resilient. It's got great technological capability, and really, I'm not sure now because it's a long time since my involvement, but they were a very fine technology-based company. I have a lot of admiration for Telstra.
There was another director on the board of Telstra at that time who had come up through the union movement, Bill Mansfield.
A good friend of mine, Bill.
And how did that work, having a senior union official who was then the Assistant Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions? How did that work, having a senior...
Perfectly well. Bill was a very sensible, capable, good businessman. And he was no different to any other director as far as ever I was concerned. And we became very good personal friends. He passed away some years ago. But perhaps even more extreme, you know, when I was chairman of Sydney Ports Corporation, one of the directors was Paddy Crumlin, who also became a good friend, and we're still in contact with one another. I have great admiration for Paddy. And here he was on the board of Sydney Ports Corporation, but he was a very good director and never let union considerations that I could tell distort his business-like attitude to what the port had to do. So I've never felt any discomfort or difficulty in having a close association at the board of director level with people who are representatives of trade unions. And I mean, many people would say that the MUA, which is where Paddy was then the head of the MUA,
the Maritime Union of Australia,
was the most militant of all. That was not my experience.
In terms of unions, Brian, you talk about never having any difficulty working with such representatives in Telstra and the Sydney Ports Corporation, both of which were highly unionised organisations or working places in those days. And yet IBM was famous for being a non-union entity, not only in Australia, but for most of the rest of the world. Any reflections on IBM not having been unionised? What were the sort of policies and practices in IBM that meant it was non-unionised compared with Telstra and the Ports Corporation? And so,
well, contrary to popular myths, IBM was not anti-union, and if union people, union organizations wanted to come and speak to people, for example, at Wangaratta, we always gave them every opportunity. But the attitude of the IBM Corporation, which started with Tom Watson when he was running IBM for many, many years, was that that there should be no need for a third party to represent employees to the owners and operators of the business. So, for example, in IBM, throughout the period since it was formed, there is no such thing as white collar and blue collar. There are no staff and management. Everybody has the same terms and conditions of employment. So everybody has the same ability to have sick leave, to have days off. There is no differentiation, and it starts with that. There's no need for demarcation lines. And if you're careful and if you manage properly, and if you treat people properly, they don't feel the need to have third-party representation. So I think it's as simple as that. And you could say that IBM had a charmed life, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, bear in mind that the company was formed at the turn of the 1900s. I left in 1993. There was still no union representation. Well, I mean, so 93 years we got lucky. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. It's not like that.